Awesome. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thrive and Survive Research Hub. I'm here with my co-host, Tineiwo, and a special guest, Mr. Keagan Stokoe. Keagan, how are you feeling today, my man?
I'm good. Excited. Thanks for having me on today.
And T, how are you feeling?
Good, always good. You know how they say, to feel good, you must believe you're good. So I started off my day that way, and it's clearly working so far.
Awesome. All right. So, Keagan, I was thinking we should start by discussing what do you do and how did you get there? So today, I was doing a little bit of stalker research on LinkedIn, and I saw that your current position is head of data and systems at Fibertime. So what does that mean, and what does Fibertime do?
Cool. So I think important to kick off with what Fibertime does, provides a little bit of context on kind of where we are and what the role entails. So Fibertime does pay-as-you-go township fiber. So when you say pay-as-you-go, I mean completely pay-as-you-go. No contracts, no obligations. You connect as and when you want. No debit orders. No expectation that you'll connect for any ongoing period. Township, meaning townships. We focus exclusively on townships, and we only connect homes in townships. It's an enormous market in South Africa. If you look across South Africa, there's roughly 17 million homes. 4 million of them are in leafy suburbs. The rest are predominantly in townships. You look at the fiber industry, and 4 million homes are connected, and the remaining 12 to 13 million are not. They're waiting, and they're reliant on mobile data. So we made a decision to focus exclusively on townships and how we bring people in townships connect them to the internet. And then fiber means actual fiber. So when we deploy a network, we work in townships, and every home in the township gets a router into their home for free. Every home gets passed, every home gets connected, every home gets a router, every home also gets a UPS, so if we continue running during load shedding. It's then R5 a day for uncapped fiber internet, minimum line speeds of 100 megs per second. So I don't know about you guys, but that's much faster than I have at home, much cheaper, much better service.
Amazing.
So R5 a day, 30 rand a week, 100 rand a month.
Wow, dude.
No contracts, no obligations. You buy today if you want to buy today. You don't buy today if you don't want to buy today. And the reason that we adopted that model is that we went through a few lessons and understood that is the way that consumers in townships typically operate. Right? Things work on a pay-as-you-go basis. You go to the spaza shop and you'll buy 1 or 2 eggs. You won't buy a carton of eggs. You'll go and you'll buy 1 cigarette. You won't buy a box of cigarettes. And what we took out of that was that a lot of previous companies came into townships and tried to deliver services that were a watered-down version of what you might find in Sea Point or in Sandton or anywhere else,
100%.
as opposed to trying to align with the behavior and the existing behavior of township consumers. So we took a complete opposite approach and went with the pay-as-you-go model. So people can buy from as little as 1 minute. It will cost you 1 cent to buy 1 minute of internet time, or you can buy up to a month, and that's going to cost you 100 rand. So that's a great story, right? I mean, R5 a day, uncapped internet, people in townships, kind of unlocking a township economy, bringing people online who haven't experienced the internet. You can imagine the world of possibilities that comes with that.
Sure.
But it's a story, and people are skeptical. And ultimately, to do this, it requires a lot of capital, a lot of faith, a lot of funding, and a lot of really well-executed strategy. So about a year and a half ago, we're telling the story. We're trying to raise some cash to actually go and build it. We were confident that we could do it, but people need to see that this is possible. People are excited to get behind it, but they enter the conversations with a big dose of skepticism. So we managed to fund a pilot project that's in Kaimandi. It's a township just outside Stellenbosch. We went and we've recently completed Kaimandi, connected just under 10,000 homes. Like I said, every home gets its own router. Every home gets its own UPS, completely operational. Things are running. The beauty about connecting every home is that we essentially create a massive Wi-Fi network across the entire township. So if all 3 of us were living in Kaimandi, I would have a Fibertime router in my home. So would T, so would Alex. I can connect to my home easy. When I walk to you, I remain connected. Right? It's the same SSID. It's the same Wi-Fi, meaning that there's this massive mesh. I come to you, I remain connected. I go to T, I remain connected. Along the way, when I'm walking, I also remain connected. As opposed to just having fiber or internet connection in your home, you suddenly have it anywhere in the township. So it's suddenly not just something that you have in your home, but essentially replaces your mobile data. So that's what Fibertime does, kind of completely rethinking the way that people connect to the internet and rethinking the way that you experience the internet and trying to align with the majority of South Africans. 40, 50 million South Africans are still in need of proper internet connection. And if you look across the globe, it's probably 1 to 3 billion people are still in need of proper internet connection. So we think it's a massive opportunity. Been really lucky to be part of that journey from, well, before Fibertime existed. Kind of joined the team, luckily, as pretty much employee number 1 or 2. The concept was there. We were nowhere near the pilot. We were nowhere near kind of implementing anything. So it's been an incredible journey walking along that path. I've been really lucky to work with some really experienced people who know what they're doing, but and being able to learn a lot of lessons from them. So that was 2 years ago yesterday, actually. I've kicked that off. So it's been a very eventful couple of years and unexpected couple of years.
Amazing. T, I know you want to jump on this. I could see your eyes just lit up as you were telling the story.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I think congrats on taking such a journey that has got the potential to make significant impact on the what we call bottom of pyramid community. I think when you get to work or do something for a living that serves such a great cause, it's so easy to be passionate. And yeah, I can obviously relate because I'm obviously in the digital space, and I know the challenges when it comes to getting people online. I think it's the whole ecosystem that is developing at different stages. But it's just so nice to obviously come across someone who is in the same ecosystem and, regardless of the challenges, passionately pursuing the big agenda of putting Africa on the map. So yeah, that's just my comment on that. But yeah, just kudos, and I can't wait to see, where this journey ends.
It's amazing. And something that you mentioned there about the story and building trust with your consumer base. I think a lot of big companies don't understand how intimate business in that micro economy actually is, in terms of people wanting to see representation. Because you're saying people buy a cigarette, people buy 2 eggs. You're buying from your community normally. So you're buying from the guy next door to you. And the reason I have a background on this is because my brother tried to do a cookie business in the townships, and a white guy from Beverview trying to sell cookies to Oaks in the township. They're like, "What are you doing? Get away from us!" So I guess the question that I would want to ask you is, how are you guys going about building that trust? Are you connecting with community leaders? Are you guys going in yourselves? Like, what's the process?
Yeah, it's a great question. And kudos to your brother. It's amazing to see people are trying to build things like that. That's what you want to hear, right? It's that
100%.
sense of agency. It's that proactiveness. So you touched on 2 core fundamentals of how we build our company. One is kind of community first, and the other is trust based. So it's important to acknowledge that townships are inherently low trust environments, right? You look at it, and it is a place where it's hostile, it's dangerous. You can't immediately trust the people around you, but over time you learn to trust them more than anybody else, right? And you learn to rely on them, and they become the people that you can rely on, and probably the only people you can rely on. Right?
Exactly.
There's no safety net, there's no fallback. The
Yeah.
person next door to you who you have to learn to trust. But that's difficult. It's kind of chicken and egg. You have to get to that point, but we do see that these communities do typically trust each other. So we've started with a completely community first approach, and the community is key. If you don't get that right, I mean, you might as well not do a thing. And we've seen that. So I mean, in Kaimandi, Fibertime is there. Vumatel is also there. Vumatel took a traditional approach. They went and they stuck up poles and they strung fiber and they put it in a few homes. Said, "Cool, come buy fiber." Right? There was no engagement with the community. There was no thinking about how you position it to the community. There was no thinking about how you involve the community in what you're actually doing. And you saw that puts out almost immediately. I mean, they were there before us, and now you see a couple of pink poles with no fiber drops coming from them.
100%.
So our approach is completely community first. So before we move into a township, we start about 7 months before. So from the day that first pole is planted, that work starts 7 months before, and that starts entirely with the community.
Amazing.
That's religious leaders, it is school leaders, it is taxi bosses, it's political leaders. You need to get everybody on board, right? And we've been very fortunate that a lot of our team are from township. They understand the dynamics at play there, And we've been very intentional in trying to take a complete step back, right? We're not coming in here saying that we have the answers. We're not coming in here saying that this is how you should do it and this is how you should go about it. We're here because we want to deliver a really high quality service, but we want to work with the community to do that. And that doesn't mean just doing it and then leaving it. It means working with the community from day one to get their support. And that support it's crucial, right? If you don't have the support, this community are so powerful. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Kind of have to keep reminding myself every time I go into it. I'd like, this is completely community governed, right? If the community doesn't want you here, you're not going to be here.
Exactly.
That goes both ways. If the community wants you there, they're going to hold onto you tight, and they're going to protect you, and they're going to protect your product, and they're going to promote your brand. Suddenly they become advocates for it. And that is an enormous moat.
Yeah.
So we start that work early, 7 months before, engaging with community members. We hire local people, so it's providing a lot of employment. And then following on from there, we kind of maintain as much of that employment as possible, but we also make it possible for community members to become Fibertime agents. So essentially, if I was a Fibertime agent and you wanted to buy internet access, so you buy Fibertime from me, completely free for me to sell, but I make a 17% commission on top of it. So it creates employment in doing that. That obviously benefits Fibertime, right? You have a distribution network in terms of people who can sell, but they become your first line of support, which is actually overlooked and really the powerful thing. If you've bought Fibertime from me and something goes wrong with your router, you're probably calling me or you're probably knocking on my door. Right? And that just creates a sense of trust because when buying from people that I know, it creates a really strong word of mouth loop. And then provided you can continue to deliver a proper service, provided you can continue to deliver internet access that works, that doesn't lead to Netflix buffering, that you continue to give back to the customer, you keep it at that same price point, you keep making it faster, you keep making it cheaper, you just build up trust gradually, and trust becomes really strong.
Amazing. T, I'm going to go to you just now, but there's just something that I was thinking about. Obviously this vision of connecting the next billion people to the internet, incredible purpose to be serving. And what I think about when I hear this is decentralized self-education. And the reason why I say that, T was telling me about his experience working at an orphanage, and where you have people there who, when you give them a book, within 48 hours, they've read the whole book and they know it back to front because they're so hungry for opportunities to learn and grow and get out of their circumstances. And, we'll touch more on traditional education and how there's a little bit of, not necessarily the best model of educating yourself, but especially in a country like South Africa, where distribution of textbooks, quality of teachers, quality of schooling at that level is really suffering. Education through the internet is, in my opinion, it's the future. So is that part of the motivation in terms of connecting the next billion people? Is it putting the power of the internet in everybody's hands, self-education, et cetera, et cetera? Like, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think it's a piece of the puzzle, right? So if you look at how you go about whatever you do every day, internet is a fundamental kind of base layer of that. Whether that's connecting with people, whether it's entertaining yourself, whether it's educating yourself, whether it's working, the internet underpins all of it.
Yeah.
You think that's going to be the same thing, right? We're creating that base layer. The pillars that are built on top of that are really exciting. Education is an obvious one, right? It's actually really difficult to get right. It's very, very difficult to get right, but we'll get it right, or someone will get it right. And that's the approach that we're taking. We're building the space there, and those pillars will emerge. It's not to say that we're going to build all of them.
Sure.
I can't build all of them. But we also want to create a space or create an environment where people can come and build. We want to make it easier for other companies or other individuals to come and build products that improve the life of township consumers. Right? So how do you attract people to come and build really significant education businesses on top of it? How do you attract people to come and build entertainment businesses? What does a world look like where a customer can purchase 1 day of Fibertime, and along with their 24 hours of internet access, they also get a 24-hour SuperSport voucher or a 24-hour Showmax voucher, or they get a 24-hour access to Udemy. Right? All these things kind of come bundled in with the internet. What does it also look like when a customer can interact with healthcare services directly through the Fibertime app? I'm a mother, I have a 3-year-old, I'm a single mom, my child is sick. Who do I turn to? It's 2 a.m. I'm sitting in a shack in Kaimandi.
Yeah.
Right? So it's healthcare, there's entertainment, there's I think a world of opportunity to build on top of the space layer. And that's slowly starting to emerge. And that, for me personally, that's what really excites me. It's kind of, what can you build on top of that? What solutions can you now put across to these consumers because that base layer is there?
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. T?
Sure. I mean, in a nutshell, I mean, I strongly believe that the internet connects you to society, to the world,
Yeah.
right? Other day, I was chatting to my sister and I was like, I would rather have no car than have no internet.
For sure.
Because without the internet, I'm basically paralyzed. So I feel like the internet in today's world, because the world is digital, allows you access to so many things that you need in able to have a high quality life. You need to integrate with society and you need to basically get educated, right? If you think about it, yes, we go to traditional school and stuff like that, but most of us generally get ahead because of access to the internet.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite a big purpose you guys are serving. And I think the better you guys do it, the more you grow, the more impact and the more better other people's lives will become. So yeah, I mean, I can't keep waiting to hear more about your guys' journey. But like I said earlier on, this is a lifeline, right? And this really brings people into society because as much as we may be 60 million South Africans living in South Africa, not even half are living in South Africa because they're not connected daily to the internet.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is like the great
One thing I would,
sorry, I just wanted to say, Keagan, the cool thing about this is like you are literally attacking the problem of inequality by breaking down that barrier, which is so cool. But yeah, sorry, I interrupted you. You were gonna say.
one thing I would add to what Theo say is that I think that flows both ways. So you look at the impact on an individual's life of having proper internet access, right? Day to day, their lives improve drastically.
Yeah.
But you just have to look at it from the opposite perspective. How does a society change? How does a country change? How does a township change when you have individuals who are more informed, who are more educated, who have access to information? That's
Exactly.
ultimately what the key thing is here, right? It's access to information. It's access to the truth. It's access to go and dig into things that you might have taken for granted previously. What does an election look like when you have people who are informed?
Yeah.
What does the world look like? What decisions get made in a country when you have people who are now able to access proper, high quality information? And that's really the overarching goal. It is a significant impact, and that's going to take a lot of time. That's going to take a lot of time. These things don't change quickly, but
Sure.
it's a start. And there's a lot that we have to get right. It's not easy. It's not an easy environment to operate in, and we've made a lot of mistakes, and we're continuing to learn. We will continue to make a lot of mistakes, but we've been very open about what we're doing, and we're trying to do it in a way to say, look, we think that we figured something out. We think that we figured out a way to deliver the internet at really high quality, really low prices, and do it really quickly. And we try to share that secret. Try to say, guys, come and build, copy what we're doing. We'll give you the tools. We'll give you the playbook. We'll give you what you need. Like, just come and do it because we can't move quick enough. We can't do this all on our own. And slowly that's starting to build momentum, and slowly people are starting to understand. And it feels like we are getting to a point where this is kind of going to catch. And I think that at that point, it's kind of things happen slowly, and then all of a sudden it just clicks into place. And we're excited to see if that happens and what the world looks like, what South Africa looks like if we get that right.
And you know what's interesting is like with big problems, there always needs to be a first. You know, somebody that says, I think it can be done, whether it's the 4-minute mile or whether it's, you know, SpaceX and now you have Blue Origin, OpenAI, and now you have Grok and all of these other different variants that have spanned off of it. There always needs to be a first. Yeah, I want to go to you now as an individual because I find you to be fascinating. So you studied an LLB, you reach the end of your degree, and you look forward and you say, yeah, no, I don't think I'm going to continue doing this. I'm curious, how did you find yourself in that position? You know, how did you have the courage to switch? And how did everybody that was with you along the journey to that point respond to your decision to switch careers?
Courage could quite easily be substituted with naivety. Yeah, right.
Okay. Yeah.
And as a 22-year-old, you have naivety in spades. I think that's a good thing. So if you looked at it through a completely realistic lens, you took the kind of well thought out, rational, strategic approach, it probably wasn't the best move. But looking back in hindsight, it's the best thing I possibly could have done. And no, at the time, it felt like a massive decision, and it probably was. Right, it probably was. It was the biggest decision I've had to make up until then, and it did require a leap of faith. But the kind of thing that got me over the line was just, could I see myself doing this for the next 40, 50, 60 years? Maybe. But if I got to the end of that, what was I going to regret more? Was I going to regret kind of having done that and sitting with this feeling that you didn't do whatever you could to live up to your potential? You didn't do whatever you could to try and be the best that you could be. You didn't do whatever you could to try and work with people who inspire you on things that inspire you, on projects that excite you, right? So that's probably the thing I fear the most. Okay, reaching 70 or 80 and go, hang on, I actually think I could have done more. Hang on, I don't think that I did all that I can to be as good as I can. That absolutely terrifies me. And it's the part that's scary is that you can talk about it now, but when you hit that point, there's no going back. There's no changing that. It's the decisions you make now that you're going to sit within 60 years' time. And there's something that's difficult to comprehend about that. So minimizing that, the possibility of having that regret was kind of the big driver of it. The other thing, and maybe more practical, was that I'm a big believer that if you don't take risks, there is no opportunity. I mean, people are typically very risk averse, and we can even drill down into that a little bit more. I think that people aren't ambitious enough. I think that everybody needs to ramp up their ambition. South Africans are pretty conservative by nature, and as a result of growing up in that environment, I think you have to actively counteract it. Like, you are going to be conservative by nature, and you have to force yourself to jump into some risks, because without it, you're always going to be limiting yourself. You're always going to be putting the handbrakes on what you could have done. And there's time to take risks, and there's time to dial back the risk. And early 20s feels like the time to try and just dial that up to 11. Right? Yeah. You're going to recover. You're going to be okay. Hey, you have to take some risks though. You have to jump into it. So making decisions like that, it's massive at the time, but over a long enough time horizon, these things will work out. They'll be okay. And I think that there was the time to jump into it. And the part that I've kind of taken out of that is that when you're making these massive decisions, whether it seems possible or not, whether it seems like a good idea or not, is somewhat irrelevant. It's the forcing function of expanding your breadth of thinking that's valuable. It forces you to think about what more could I do? What other approach could I take here? And I think that that's a skill you develop, and you kind of carry it through into everything else that you do.
100%. And I guess what I'm curious about is, was there a specific moment that this happened, or was it more of a gradual evolution of belief where it was like a sliding scale, where initially you made this choice and you're like, it's okay, I can do this. And eventually this creeping sense where it was like, oh geez, I can't continue on this path? Or was it like one conversation, one exercise, one breakthrough? Because I'm trying to identify something that can be replicable for other people in their lives. You know, was there an exercise? Was there a thought exercise? I'm curious.
Good question. I'm thinking back. There wasn't one moment. There was a period where it became pretty clear. And that period was where it's final year, it's either mid-year exams or final exams, and studying, it was okay. And there was not that I disliked I didn't dislike it all. You know, parts of it that were interesting, but was just completely fascinated by the world of technology and the world of startups, and kind of sitting here and you're looking at a criminal law textbook and your mind is in a completely different place. 100%. Right? You kind of running through ideas and you're running through people, and you're fascinated by that. And that feeling of being fascinated, of being completely drawn into a space, of being completely drawn into an idea, I love that. And it's kind of what I pursue on a daily basis. It's just, what can I get incredibly curious about? So that's when I'm at my happiest. That's when I'm at my best. That's when I'm at my most creative. And I felt that. I felt that the pull was there. The pull wasn't for this criminal law textbook sitting in front of me.
Yes.
And as simple as it sounds, I think that it's actually a pretty effective way. Just wherever you're curious, wherever you're fascinated, wherever you're interested, just follow that. Like if you can just get obsessed about something,
Yes.
you almost certainly be good at it, right? But if you can't get obsessed, you're not going to be great. You might be okay, but I mean, do you want to be okay or do you want to be great?
Dude, I use this push-pull analogy a lot, where when you are doing a job, you have to push yourself towards it in the morning. It's discipline. When you are doing something that you're passionate about, you get pulled towards it. So you wake up in the morning, you don't have to be like, oh, geez, let me get out of bed, let me go do this. You get pulled towards it. And that's, for me, you get goosebumps just thinking about it, because that's when your soul, in my opinion, is speaking to you and telling you this is what you need to do. T?
And I like how you guys basically summed that up, right? Because what I'm understanding from this is that passion is derived from purpose.
Yeah.
So if you find what is purposeful to your life journey, then it is much easier for you to be passionate about it. And this week we're at our conference, annual conference at work, and I was so inspired by something that was shared with us. They called it the 4 Ps, which basically stated that if you find your purpose, it's easy to derive your passion. And if you find your passion, you will then perform accordingly. And because of the latter 3, the profits will then take care of themselves. Yeah. So it's just nice to hear. I mean, when Keagan elaborated on the fact that he made the switch, there was no, I wanted to be a multi-millionaire or a billionaire one day. There was no, I wanted to run my own company. It was purely, I found this interesting. I was obsessed about it. I went into it. There was no results attached to it, but it was more about, this is what I'm interested about. This is clearly my purpose, and I'm going to dive in irregardless of how much risk it is. And now look. So what a beautiful story. I just love how you guys both summed up to obviously, give out the formula that I've just shared about starting off with purpose and everything else taking care of itself.
Yeah. Keagan, I also want to add something like curiosity is a massive competitive advantage that a lot of people don't think about. I mean, I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine who is very dissatisfied with his working arrangement currently. But he's also incredibly curious about another area of his life, like a hobby and a passion. And he's the kind of person where he will stay up until midnight, get 4 hours of sleep just to read up about something that he likes. And so I said to him, like, dude, you're being an idiot. Like, you have a massive competitive advantage, because if you put him in an environment where he's passionate about and he has to compete against somebody who's doing it just for a job, he's going to blow them out of the water. Because that other person stops at 5, and it was hard for them to get to 5. They pushed themselves to get to 5. He's going to get pulled towards midnight, where he has to say, holy shit, I need to go to bed. Otherwise, I'm going to have no sleep tonight. So curiosity, massive competitive advantage.
Can't agree with you more there. People overlook it. I think we had an interesting age where we started to see that emerge more and more.
Yeah.
People have been down a kind of fairly similar path up until this point. And you're now beginning to see people break away or stick to the path that they're on. Right? It depends. It depends how much appetite they have for change, how much appetite they have for risk. But when you see people identifying and pursuing and finding a way to work on the things that they love, they appear different when they enjoy what they do. Like looks like your eyes are more awake, right? They're more attentive. The energy is just alive.
Yeah.
I think that people can feel when you love what you're doing, and conversely, people can feel when you're yearning for more. Right? You can see when people are dissatisfied. You can see when they know that they're capable of more, but they don't know how to do it. And it's the word that I always use to think about it is obsession. I mean, obsession is at the heart of great work. Right? If you can't get obsessed about it, it's going to be really tough to be great at it.
100%. Yeah, couldn't agree more. T, do you have anything else to add before I move on to the next topic?
Yeah, just one sentence. What I like about what he said about taking risk, right? I always say for like people that live on the conservative side, like you spoke about South Africans being risk averse. Better late than never, right?
Yeah.
I think if you always have that in mind, then you're always willing to take the fall, because I think there's lots of great lessons that you can learn in taking risk. And for me, in my personal life, and I'm sure Keegan can attest to that, is that the biggest lessons and the most rewarding lessons are in the failures, right? Because that's what gives you the edge.
Yeah.
And, you know, like they say, fail fast and fail quickly. You know, and you could take that same sentence and say, when you fail fast and fail quickly, you get the gems and the knowledge that nobody else has, because only you can fail and only you have the hand experience of what you've gained from those failures.
Well said. Love it. Keagan, I just want to give some background into how I first discovered you as an individual. So I came across a bit of your writing, and I think it was on LinkedIn. And I still remember the title of the article. It was called "The View from Your Deathbed."
Wow.
And I had a
Wow.
very morbid title, but it was a good article. I remember I read this thing and I thought, holy shit, this oak, he gets it. You know, it's just something that you wrote in that article really resonated with me. And for those who, you know, would like to know something about this article, it was basically a thought exercise where Keagan was writing about his future self coming back and giving himself advice. And I think this is a great idea for everybody to do, because there's no one in this world who knows you better than you. And more often than not, the only barrier between you becoming a better version of yourself is being honest with yourself. And so when you do this exercise of, you know, projecting a future you, it's almost like you detach and you have this opportunity to be very critical and objective of yourself, right? But what I wanted to talk to you about was your agency series. So you wrote 3 parts about the subject of agency, and I really enjoyed your writing on this. And I'll include a link to these articles in the description below the video. But I'm curious, what does agency mean to you? When did you become fascinated with it? And how do you cultivate it in your own life?
First of all, thank you. I mean, yeah, always good to hear when your writing's being read and when something's landing. So it's always very welcome feedback. So thank you. Agency is interesting. Agency is kind of now probably something to think about on a daily basis, but it's become very embedded in my worldview. And I think it's one of the most powerful ideas I've ever come across. Very simply, I view agency as your willingness and your ability to exert your will in the world, right? Are you a person who has things dictated to them, or are you somebody who hears that there might be limitations, but figures out that there's a way past that?
Yeah.
There's a different way to do it, right? And it feels like people fall into one of 2 camps there. Either these are the rules and these are the constraints, and somebody will play within those constraints, and that's okay if you want to do that. But almost anybody who's done something significant, almost anybody who's created something new or created value or built something worth building, has seen these constraints and gone, I see that there are constraints, but I'm going to figure out how to get past them.
Yeah.
Came across the idea a few years ago, and it's one of those things that once you see it, it's very difficult to unsee. You can see when people are compliant versus when they are or not. You can see when somebody has agency versus when they don't.
Yeah.
And I think that the way to cultivate it is that it is definitely a learnable skill, right? It is, but it's a difficult skill because it's difficult to pinpoint. Even in this kind of description out, something I've thought about for ages, can't give you a nice, crisp, concise definition of what agency is or how to recognize it. But you start to see it, and you start to pick up on it, and you start to develop an intuition for it. And so what are some tangible examples of agency? When you see a piece of writing that you like, is reaching out to that person. When you see somebody who's doing something cool, it's saying, hey, can we get coffee? It's when you see somebody who you want to work with and popping them an email saying, oh, let's go get a coffee and talk about what you're working on. It's just being very proactive about the thing that you do in your day-to-day life. And I think that a kind of useful heuristic for that is make connection with people, make kind of conversation with people that's going to make it more likely that you get lucky in future.
100%.
When you're doing things, when you're building things, it's kind of it's just a willingness to do whatever you need to do, right? Like to make this thing work. It doesn't matter how it reflects on you or what it does to your ego or how it feels like it's attacking your identity. It's just, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get this thing over the line. And when you do that, when you decide that, it doesn't matter what it costs, what I have to do to get a win here, you become really creative and you become really resourceful. You can see the difference between people who go, okay, this can't be done. I tried and that's okay. It's just something that can't be done, versus somebody who says, I don't care if the world tells me I can't do this. I'm going to figure out how to do this.
100%.
And I know that I definitely want to be the latter, but I definitely want to work with people who are the latter.
Yeah.
And that's a massive filter when thinking about who to work with or what to work on, even just who to surround yourself with. Right? You need to be surrounded by people who are willing to take a leap of faith, people who are willing to go, that's not realistic, but maybe it's possible and let's give it a go.
Yeah.
Life's just much better, right? You're more likely to do great things if you're surrounded by people like that.
Realistic. I hate that word. Whenever someone says that, I just say, okay, this conversation is not going to go much further. See?
Well said. Yeah, from my side, I mean, I'm just absorbing, and there's a lot of wisdom being shared here. So I do have a question, but I'll keep that for just at the end. It's about your life philosophy and
Yeah,
obviously what gets you waking up every morning.
that is the
But
next, yeah, that's literally the next thing. So great that you're setting that up. I just wanted to tie something interesting into this. So we spoke to another guy previously, good friend of mine by the name of Neil Bester. And something he just says, and it's very simple, which I think ties into this, is how bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? Because when you set off on this journey of achieving anything, you have no idea what it's going to take to get there. No idea. And it's just a question of, will you keep pushing yourself to the limit of sacrificing and reinventing and growing? And the person that you are when you start and the person that you are when you finish, it's not the same person. And that's basically the point of these big, ambitious goals. It's like we say, happiness is pursuing something. It's not getting it. Because when you get it, it's so temporary. But the pursuit is 99% of the experience, Yeah, resourcefulness, which something that you said there that I'd love to touch on, because in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey speaks about being proactive. It's the first habit. And he says, use your R&I, your resourcefulness and your initiative. People say, I can't do something because I don't have this. That is saying you don't have resources. Resourcefulness is saying, I want to do this. Let me see what I have. And what can I do with it? In a nutshell. So yeah, love it. Love the concept of agency. I can see why you're so passionate about it, because your whole being speaks of agency. The next thing I wanted to discuss, which ties into what T was saying, was the subject of becoming a better thinker and how you can go about doing that. You are your thoughts, basically. Your human experience is your thoughts and your kind of perception of your senses and what you're, perceiving throughout the day. You're a writer. I'm curious, is that part of you trying to be a better thinker? Do you write because it gives you clarity? How do you go about becoming a better thinker?
We've been through an interesting period over the last few months, where maybe even longer, maybe even a year, we've been writing very little. Not intentionally, but the habit fell away. Things got busy, and it became something that I failed to prioritize. And suddenly, days went by, weeks went by, months went by. You haven't written,
Sure.
and you forget how important it is. Right? Forget how important it is to take some time to, one, consolidate your thoughts and get them on paper, and figure out that 95% of them are very wrong. Right? It's easy to convince yourself when you're talking to yourself, but when you put it on paper, you can't fool yourself. You can't lie.
100%.
So like, simple answer, yeah. If you want to be a better thinker, just write. I think that's the low-hanging fruit. Write more. And recently, a month or two ago, started writing far more again. Not publishing as much, but just writing lots more to myself.
Yeah.
It's incredible kind of how much clarity of thought comes from it. But I think the real power of it is that it frees up your mind to begin to explore new ideas. So once you have an idea down, you kind of see the same ideas cycling time and time again, right? And it emerges in different ways, and you describe it in different ways, and you see it coming out from different people or different places. But there's one core idea to it. So you have to get all of those down before that core idea starts to emerge. There's 3 or 4 or 5 core ideas which continue to come up. And once you have clarity on that, you can add another idea. So you have clarity on these 3, 4, 5, and all of a sudden you can add a 6th, and you can add a 7th. I think that's how you become a really diverse thinker.
Yeah.
That's how you become a kind of multilateral thinker, and that's powerful, right? That's really what we're in pursuit of here. It's clarity of thought about those 3, 4, 5 things, and then it's about stocking these things up, having 10, 20, 30. And you see that in conversation with people who are great thinkers. They're very diverse, but they're also very clear in what they're thinking and how they think about it and how they arrived at it. And I think that writing is a necessary ingredient in that. And maybe that's not writing for everybody. Maybe that's conversation. Maybe that's art. Maybe that's making videos. Doesn't really matter what it is. But the key idea is that you have to take this knowledge that you're consistently just kind of consuming, and you have to kind of process it and produce something with it. If you're not producing, you're not learning, right? If you're not taking that and crystallizing it into something that you can attach to, like, you haven't finished that learning process. You have to close the loop, otherwise you're not learning. So for me, it's writing. For other people, it's probably something else. What I have found interesting over the last little while is that the people around you are actually really important in helping you form your thoughts and form your ideas. Not just because they become an input for new ideas, but because when you have the right people around you, and when I say right people, I think it's twofold. One, people who you can be vulnerable with, and that's really, really important. You need people who you can feel comfortable saying something stupid in front of, right? You need to be able to turn to people and say, I've literally had this thought 30 seconds ago. Can I talk to you about it? And people who are there and willing to listen and willing to hear it out and willing to give you feedback. And then at the end say, I think you're being a bit of an idiot because it's clearly wrong, right? Or say, okay, maybe there's something there and it's worth pursuing. But it's almost inevitably gets better. And I think it's just a function of having a really quick feedback loop. So I've been lucky in having discovered a few people around me who think very differently, but also think about the world in a similar way and are willing to kind of entertain thoughts and give me feedback, and vice versa. That's a relationship, right? It's reciprocal, it's give and take. And that's really helped consolidate and crystallize a lot of my thinking. And you can be deliberate about how you create conditions for vulnerability. It is, one, just being intentional about, I'm going to share more than I think I should. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm typically a very private and a very closed person. Naturally, by default, I'll reveal as little as possible. And I've been trying really hard to just be more open. Share more than you think you need to. Because people like it. People like knowing who's underneath. People like knowing where you're from. People feel an affinity towards you, a sense of trust towards you when you willing to take the first step in being vulnerable. So reveal a card or two, because it just immediately makes that relationship better. It immediately makes it more likely that you can jump into conversations that actually mean something.
Yeah.
Right? Small talk drives me insane. Just cut the fly. Just get to the good stuff. You'll have it with some people and you won't have it with others. Like, find those people who you can, because those conversations just build and they compound, and you get to the really good stuff over time. So yeah, I mean, clear thinking, right? Reflect, you've got to be introspective, but also find people that you can do that with, because it kind of negates the need to have this consistent writing habit, which I know can be difficult for a lot of people.
100%. And something you said there, vulnerability. When you're vulnerable, you give others permission to be vulnerable. So, T, I know you want to.
I like the vulnerability part, right? Because I always say to my wife, I'm looking for the guy who said nice guys finish last. Because that's the biggest lie I ever told. Right? I think like in the long run, nice guys finish first, because like Keagan said, when you're vulnerable, you allow people access to you, but it needs to be with the right people, firstly. And then number two, Keagan said this earlier on, when you're authentic, people feel the energy, right? And then they give it back to you. So in my personal life, generally, obviously, I've been a leader for a very long time in my life in different spheres, from sports to business to education, and my own personal life, also giving back to the community. And at never in a point did I use dominance or force to lead. I used my vulnerability to lead, and that has just allowed a growing following to follow me. And I'm not popular. I'm not the most charismatic guy, but I'm one guy who will give you who I am all the time.
Yeah.
If you let me down and you disrespect my authenticity and my vulnerability, then I naturally will drift away in a respectful manner. So yeah, I like the philosophy you guys are both sharing there. And yeah, you guys have just reinforced why I'm looking for this guy who said nice guys finish last, because that remains the biggest lie ever told.
Yeah, but you know, T, that subject, that statement of nice guys, it's like, I think it's important to define what a nice guy actually is, because
Yeah.
it ties in with what Jordan Peterson talks about being a good man, in the sense of, to be a good man, you have to be dangerous and be able to control that danger. And when I say dangerous, I don't mean, you got to be this big oak who bliksums everybody. I just mean, part of being dangerous is being willing to speak the truth. And most people, they think they're being nice, but they're actually being a coward. Like Keegan was saying about small talk, there's no depth because people are scared to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
So vulnerability is dangerous because you're going out on the ledge and you're saying, this is what I really am. Do you like that? Or do you think I'm an idiot? You know? So yeah, the good man is the guy who can be vulnerable, but also has the skill to navigate it without being a bit of an idiot about it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right people.
Yeah.
Vulnerability around the right people,
Yeah.
I think is the key to success.
Keegan?
And that requires being okay with not having everyone like you. And like you said, this is who I am. This
Yeah.
is kind of what I believe. It's what I stand for. It's right. This is it. You stick your flag up in there saying, if you feel the same way, well, come. We're probably going to get on pretty well. We can probably do some cool things together. That flag's not going to attract everyone. And you got to be okay with that. You got to be okay with some people not liking you and some people disagreeing with you and some people seeing it differently. Like, it's part and parcel of it.
Yeah, and the truth is, how do you find people that genuinely like you? The only way is to be authentic. Because if you're playing a role, they don't like you, they like the role that you play. So you've got to risk walking alone in the wilderness by yourself a little bit to find your tribe. That's scary for a lot of people. But, it's like you were saying, to find your purpose, you've got to walk. T says something that I love. It's one of my favorite quotes. Maybe I'm going to butcher this, but you say, the biggest obstacle to a great life is a good life.
Yeah.
Right? Things are all right. They're not great, but they're all right. It's just tolerable. And that is the most dangerous position to be in, because it's not shit enough to motivate you to leave, but it's not great enough that it's worth being there,
Yeah. Yeah. So well said. And you didn't butcher it. You said it's spot on, right? Because I think that comfort zone is what takes you away from taking risks, like Keegan said. And I think a lot of us are in that zone, that optimal zone, where it's nice. And it's nice, and I'd rather have this than take the risk and see what's on the other side of the wall.
Yeah, and what's amazing is you have no idea how incredible life can be. I just think to myself, I think it's now 2 years that since I resigned from my last job. And at the time, it seemed like a big move because I had a great on paper job. I was working in a very nice building. My mom loved it. I had a great salary. I was staying on a floor with everyone in the building, like so many beautiful women. It was like an oasis. But the work was shit. And my spirit was saying to me, what the flip are you doing? Why are you here? This is not the right place for you. And I actually did this exercise that Tim Ferriss has a TED talk about. It's his fear setting exercise, where you define the fear, you define the risks, and then you see how you could mitigate those risks. And I took a piece of paper, I wrote it out. I said, okay, so there's 7 steps that I need to take to do this. And within 30 minutes, I'd done 6 of the 7 steps. And the last one was handing in my resignation letter. And I thought,
Jeez.
oh shit, I'm actually doing this. And, like I actually I was reading before this interview, one of your articles about agency. And it speaks to one of my favorite quotes where it says, ask for forgiveness, not for permission. And that was something that I did in that moment where I said, I'm not going to ask anybody about this. I'm just going to do it. I only told my family about it the night before my last day. Yes, they freaked out. Yes, my mom cried. But the truth is, when you have certainty and conviction, after a month or so, everybody falls in line because they're like, no, this guy's doing it. And his confidence becomes my confidence. And I can say it was one of top 3 best decisions I ever made in my life. So yeah, just wanted to share that.
Amazing story.
What
Amazing
do your
story.
family say?
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
What do your family say about it now, 2 years later?
Oh, they love it. They love it. But you know what it is? It's like when everything works out, everybody's like, that was a great move. But when you have to make the choice and you have to make it work, people don't like it because it also forces them to re-examine their own lives and ask themselves, what decisions am I not making? You know? And so more often than not, people give advice from a paradigm of trying to justify their choices instead of cultivating advice that's going to serve you in your life, you know?
Yeah. Can I jump in with a question?
Please.
So something I've been thinking about recently, I think I was spurred by the fact that seeing a lot of old friends who I haven't seen for a long time, right? I think that is just, again, function of age. People are living in different places and doing different things, and people that you were once close with, you don't see for a long time, and eventually you do, and eventually you see them. But people change. So if I look at myself a year or 2 ago to who I am now, completely different. Different person, different priorities, kind of a different path that I'm on. Some of my other friends have changed, some haven't. But you can feel a little sense of tension when people haven't, right? They still expect you to be the same person that you were a couple of years ago. And whether that's because they like that person or because it reveals that, okay, hang on, maybe I haven't changed as much as I wanted to in the past 2 years, there's a tension because it kind of, don't change too much. Don't do too much. And that's difficult, right? I mean, these are people that are really close to you. They're people that you love. They're people that you value their opinion. And so I don't have a good answer to it, but it feels like that's probably something that's going to happen, provided you want to continue to change and continue to grow and continue to evolve. It'd be interesting to hear how you have thought about it and how you guys do think about it or approach it.
I want to give you a chance to give your input here.
Yeah. So I think, firstly, I think it's essential to change because if you haven't changed, there's a problem, right? I think growth is change and growth is character development. And I guess it's changing for the worse and it's changing for the better. And I think what separates people is the gap between those who've changed for the better versus those who changed for the worse. So I believe friendships remain natural and authentic if you've both changed for the better, you've both grown. And you spoke about a certain tension that comes when someone hasn't changed or you've changed in different ways. It's purely because change isn't the same. And therefore, you feel the energy that obviously tells you guys you're not aligning anymore. And I think that energy is very important to pick up because that's where judgmental habits begin, right? Because he then looks at you like, oh, you think you X, Y, Z. And you then also will naturally also tend to judge and be like, well, you haven't grown up X, Y, Z. So I just think that's the gap and that's what you feel in the form of energy. And unfortunately, that's just life. It sucks, but I guess that's why as you get older, you have less friends, more associates, but the few friends and family that you have, become your really intimate and close circle that you kind of compassionate with and live around. Which I could be wrong, but that's just been my assessment of it.
Well said. I agree with you. I would also add a couple of things. You can love someone from afar. Just because you care about somebody doesn't mean you need to let them into your space. Also, boundaries. You get to decide how much of yourself you share with people. So it's perfectly okay to have a friend who you just share a beer with on a Friday, and you talk about football, and that's it. You don't have to share every like element of your life. Also, if you look at your life as a book with chapters, some people are there for the whole book. Some people are there for one of the early chapters, and some people only come at the end, and they might be the main character. You know, think about there's a book called Atlas Shrugged, one of my favorite books, and throughout the book they speak about who is John Galt, and basically the whole book they talk about a guy who really only shows up in the last act of it. You know, so you might meet your best friend, like your bestest friend at 65, which is it's sad, but you know, maybe you guys were preparing the whole time to have that friendship, and that's okay. You know,
Wow.
that's what I would say.
Making a lot of notes here, guys. I'm sorry if you see me
No,
looking down. I have this is my oldest journal. This is from 2009. And it's funny, as Keagan was speaking, like there was one page, I wrote this on the 22nd of October 2011. It was a quote by Mahatma Gandhi, which I think like resonates to what you guys both said. And the quote states that here, all your scholarship would be in vain if at the same time you do not build your character and attain mastery over your thoughts and actions in comparison to your previous character.
Yeah, 100%.
So wow, what a question, Keagan. But I think life is about changing for the better, and I think another word for that is growing up.
Yeah, 100%.
And Keagan, yourself, what's your definition on this? Because it's I think it's quite a sensitive topic and question, but I think it's one that every human being needs to reflect on and think about as you develop your relationships into your adult life.
Very similar to what both of you have expressed there. Right? So I think that you have to be changing. Right? If you're not, it's probably a bad thing. Change can be good or can be bad, and that's the clear indication of when there might be some tension when change is good or bad. The other time tension introduces when one person has changed far more than another. And that's simply in a good way, right? If you've changed a lot, evolved a lot over a short period of time, other people may not, and sometimes that gap is just a little bit too big. I think that as we get older, there is your interests also change. The things that you share with people significantly change, right? If you look at how you're spending the bulk of your time, things that are consuming your mind the most, if you don't share that with people anymore, it's difficult to have a real deep connection with them. And I think that touched on what Alex was saying about along the way, you're going to discover people who are really, really close to you. And it's okay if they're really close to you for a year or for 10 or for the rest of your life. Like, there's no time limit on that, right? And you constantly look at, well, how can we both get the most out of this relationship? I think that's fair. I think it's important to communicate this with people early on, right? I mean, you need to be on the same page. You need to make sure that they understand and that you understand it, and that way you can manage expectations. But it's an inevitable part of it, and it's starting to emerge now, but it's something that I expect to continue to be present for the next 40, 50, 60, 80 years, whatever it is. So it is interesting to see if people are noticing it and if they're thinking about it, right? It's something that I think everybody experiences, but not everybody is aware of.
And you know, I think it's also about just expectations, like you say, managing expectations. T speaks about that a lot. If you have this like idea in your mind that it should never be like this, that a relationship should never end or something like that, you feel pain or even the meaning of pain, you know, you expect it's not supposed to be there. When you understand that that's natural and that's part of life, you have peace, and that's wisdom. You know, we talk about philosophy as a tool for navigating the way the universe works more elegantly with less friction, evolving as a person. That's also philosophy. I just think philosophy is also, when you have wisdom, you have peace. When you have ignorance, you have frustration, you have friction. You're making the wrong choices. You're not operating in alignment with the way the universe works, you know. So expectation is a big one.
And I think also it's also good to like define like your relationships, right? So like with me, I've got a basket of close friends, right?
Yeah.
Who are all very, very close to me. But there's some that I regularly communicate with, like every month, every week. And then there's some that I speak to 4 times a year, literally.
Yeah.
But they still fall in that like basket of really close friends. If I picked up the phone and said, I'm having a birthday party, please can you fly down? Irregardless of the fact that we don't talk every day, they're gonna be there.
Yeah.
But I think, like you said, it's about managing expectations and also understanding that every friendship is managed differently based on your personality traits, right? And also on what level you guys click on.
Yeah.
You know, that's like Keagan spoke about this friends that you'll have for vulnerability purposes. Some are better because you guys are in the same field of profession. Some are more closer because you guys both have families or about to get married. And I think it's about just comparting those relationships and then understanding that they're all the same, just treated differently.
Well said. Well said.
Cool.
I have one more question, and then I think we can wrap this baby up.
Yep.
Stoicism. We touched on philosophy just now, and you recommended an absolute cracker of a book to me the one time on A Guide to the Good Life by William B. Irvine, which is ironically, like, I don't want to joke, but the best book I've ever read about Stoicism and the most, like, not well-known one, you know? When did you stumble across Stoicism? Do you still read about it now? Do you apply any of it in your own life, or was it more of a phase? You know, I'm curious.
I need to go back and reread that. It is a cracking book. I haven't come across it for a few years now. First came across, started reading more and more of the Stoics in 2019 and 2020 probably would have been the most concentrated phase. Don't know if there was a particular reason for it, or perhaps I find that you tend to stumble across ideas and philosophies at the time that you need them, right? And they'll answer your questions. If they don't, you put it down fairly quickly. And I felt that I was very drawn to it, and I felt that I was particularly drawn to the practical aspects of it. Right? This wasn't something that I could read about and sit and ponder. It was something that I could read about and go and implement the next second. And that was really the difference between any other philosophy I'd read or learned about and what I was reading about the Stoics. And perhaps that was just the content that I was consuming, but it felt actionable. And that created this beautiful feedback loop where I would take ideas and I would implement them and I would immediately see improvements as a result of it. And that's made it very appealing, right? I just learned that you just want to get better and better.
100%.
So for a year or two, read a lot of it and implemented a lot of it. And since then, haven't read much. We'll touch on it every now and then and often go back to some of the more original pieces. But what I do find is that those habits are fairly deeply ingrained. They became a way that I conduct myself, a way that I think about things. They are part of my personality now. And as much as they've evolved and they've changed, and I've probably adapted them to suit my needs a lot more. If you drill down into it, it's definitely still at the base, right? It's definitely still a core foundation of how I conduct myself and how I think about the world and how I try to interact with the world. So it had a massive impact on my life. And that was, one, at an impressionable age, two, at a stage where I was really trying to be deliberate about the way that I was carrying myself through the world. And that is what I found then. And I've encountered other philosophies and have enjoyed different pieces of it. But I think that ultimately you taking these things and you're building a philosophy that works for you. You're building something that is unique to you. It's unique to the things that you find yourself struggling with on a day-to-day basis. It's unique to they tools to become the kind of person that you want to become. And I think it kind of starts with having clarity about how do I want to conduct myself? Who do I want to be? What do I want to stand for? What do I believe? What do I value? And then you use these tools to slowly craft yourself into that person.
Hell of an answer,
Sure.
man. Hell of an answer. I love it there about your own philosophy. I couldn't agree more. Me and T talk about this all the time, defining your own value system, taking what you can from different sources, and then building your own toolbox that suits you the most as an individual.
Yeah.
T?
And I mean, I just want to touch on what Keagan mentioned there, right? Because I think in this episode, we've spoken a lot about like character development and change and following your passion, right? But not to turn an answer into a question, but you obviously have your inner child, your soul. That doesn't change, right?
Sure.
The conversation with you have with yourself as the real Keagan. How do you manage that relationship, especially growing up with yourself, with your inner voice?
I don't know if I agree with the original statement there that your inner child doesn't change, but
Okay.
maybe we unpack that a little bit because that's an important assumption to that question, right? So I mean, if I look at that, that has changed significantly for me. That's evolved a whole lot,
Wow.
and I find that inner voice is probably more malleable than you think. So from the outset, it feels like, okay, oh, this is my inner child, this is my inner voice, this is fairly set, and this is the way that I go about things. And as much as it takes time to change that, you can be deliberate in changing it. And it's incredibly powerful. Right? It's probably the deepest source of input that you get on a day-to-day basis. It's kind of the default. It's what you fall back to. It's happening in subconscious. How you go about changing that, I don't know, but I have felt mine shifting. And as I've become clearer about my priorities and become clearer about what I want to be doing in the world, I felt that inner voice is shifting too.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It does, right? Because I think your inner voice is what holds you accountable. Like for me, this is not who you are. This is against your morals. Like Alex spoke, he first spoke to him, said, "What are you doing here?" You know. But it's also nice to know that maybe because I kind of found what my purpose was at a very young age. Maybe that's why it does feel like it hasn't changed. But for you guys made this quick switch, after discovering that this is not what I want to be doing, and this is the direction that I'm going. So yeah, very, very interesting. And I mean,
Yeah.
Alex, how do you manage yours? Because clearly you also seem to be one where your inner voice also changed, right? Because it was
I love this.
CA.
Yeah, I love this subject. I can speak to this because I read a book by somebody called Dr. Nicole Pereira, who wrote a book. I think it was How to Heal Your Inner Child. So it addresses this directly, right? And I think we should distinguish. So you have your inner voice, be your internal dialogue, your intuition. And then the question is, who's in the driver's seat? Is it you as a child, or is it you as an adult? So I think to merge what Keagan and T have said into one like premise, I don't think your inner child changes. I think your inner voice changes. And who's in the driving seat changes. So when we talk, the book is about trauma, this book by Dr. Nicole. And she says a lot of people are reacting to life from the paradigm of their child, their inner child, instead of with the skills of an adult. So like a trauma response is where you are in fight or flight mode, and you're just reacting like an animal would. You're not thinking about it with the skills and the intelligence of an adult. And in this book, she talks about the process of reassuring your inner child that the you of today as an adult can handle these situations and that they don't have to grab the wheel and drive like a freaking maniac to get you out of there. So if you see something like, let's just use a great example. Let's imagine you're at work and a coworker of yours made a mistake, right? And instead of reacting like an adult by saying, I made a mistake, it's my responsibility, I'm going to fix it. I might not know the answer, but I'll figure it out like an adult would. They either try and hide the mistake, or they try and blame somebody else, or they lie to themselves and they say, this wasn't even a mistake in the first place. That right there is a child that is scared to get in trouble because maybe they had a parent that had an explosive temper or something like that. And they're reacting, the child is in the driver's seat. So the inner voice there,
100%.
the adult would say, okay, no, let's just handle the situation. So that's kind of my thought process on this inner child, inner voice story. Keagan.
How much time have you spent exploring and unpacking the impact your childhood and parents have on who you are now?
Like 2 years. 2 years.
Question.
A long time. Because it does.
It's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like we say, every person must play the cards that they're dealt. And it's about what premise you're operating from. You can say life is happening to you or life is happening for you. I think someone with agency would say life is happening for you, and they take their childhood experience and they make it work for them. So yeah, that's my take on it. T?
Very interesting. For me, I obviously took risk at a very like young age. Like I said, maybe that's why I have a different like understanding of it. But I've always, regardless of what anyone thought, my mom, my dad, my wife, I always did what I felt was aligned with my inner voice at the time, which I found at a very young age. So for me,
Amazing.
purpose, making an impact on other people is what drives me. Not necessarily like building the biggest company or having the most amazing job or having the most of money. If I can make a positive impact on someone's life and get the opportunity to do it to more and more and more and more people, I will gravitate towards making that decision, and profits are the last thing. So for me, just following that and seeing, okay, where in this life can I make the most impact, and following that has led me to a life of financial stability and all those other type of stuff. But I follow that, and that's what I continue to do all the time.
Isn't it ironic that more often than not, when you pursue the unconventional route, you tend to get the conventional rewards that most people are looking for? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because again, like we say, what's your biggest competitive advantage? It is your unique curiosity, your unique skill set, your unique personality. And no one can be better than you are at being you, you know? So
Wow.
what a
Wow.
great,
Wow.
I think this is a great place to end this pod, gents. I think it's couldn't be better. Keagan, thank you so much. I love this. It's definitely not the last time we're gonna have you on, yeah. T?
Yeah, and I also just want to say, Keagan, it was so inspiring to chat to you and to get to hear your life story. I'm so charged and really
Up.
grateful that you made the time to share so much wisdom with us. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thanks to both of you. I mean, yeah, so love being on here and love just having a conversation. So, I mean, thanks for creating the space for it, right?
Awesome.
Appreciate it. I'm keen for another.
All right, everybody. Thank you. That's the episode. And if you haven't, hit that like button and subscribe.